not tanks, not troops, but cold. One moment, homes are warm. The next, everything goes dark. No heat, no water, no certainty. This is not a blackout. It is a message. More than 1 million people in southeastern Ukraine experienced this at the same time. Hospitals switched to backup power. Water systems slowed. Families waited in silence, in freezing homes. This was not weather. It was design. Russia is no longer attacking only cities or front lines. It is attacking systems, the systems that make modern life possible. Electricity, heat, water. When those systems fail, society begins to fracture. I've watched conflicts around the world, and here is the truth. When energy becomes a target, civilians become leverage. If you want to understand how modern wars are really fought, stay with me, share this. Because what you're seeing is not just Ukraine's story, it's a preview, and to understand what's really happening, we need to step back and look at the logic behind this war. To understand this moment, we need to be precise about what is actually at stake. This is not simply about missiles hitting power stations. It is about timing, winter, snow, frost. Russia has intensified strikes on Ukraine's energy infrastructure for one reason: pressure. Not on the battlefield alone, but on daily life. When electricity fails, heat disappears. When heat disappears, hospitals struggle. Water systems slow. Cities tense up. Ukrainian officials warned that more attacks could be coming, timed deliberately with harsh weather. This is not random escalation. It is calculated. President Volodymyr Zelensky called it mockery. He argued there is no military logic in hitting energy systems. Only psychological logic. Break the grid, strain the population, test resilience. At the same time, Ukraine is asking its allies not to slow support, especially air defenses. Because once the grid is hit, recovery takes time, and the strikes keep coming. This is the core of the problem. A war that is no longer only about land, but about endurance. And to see how we arrived here, we have to look backward at how this strategy evolved. To understand how this became possible, we have to look at the longer arc of this war. Russia did not begin by targeting energy systems. It learned in the early stages of the invasion, the focus was speed, shock, territory. But modern states are resilient. Cities adapt, armies adjust, societies absorb pain. So the strategy shifted. Instead of chasing rapid breakthroughs, Russia turned to cycles. Attack, wait, observe, attack again. Energy infrastructure became central because it sits at the intersection of economy, morale, and survival. Power grids are complex, they are hard to defend completely, and they take time to repair. Winter magnifies this vulnerability. Cold turns inconvenience into crisis. Darkness turns patience into fear. This is not new in history. Wars have always followed seasons. But in an industrial society, winter targets systems, not just soldiers. Ukraine's energy providers now operate in permanent crisis mode. Strikes arrive in waves, drones, cruise missiles, ballistic missiles. Recovery becomes slower than destruction. Over time, this creates a dangerous imbalance. Not because the state collapses, but because exhaustion sets in, and that is where the real pressure begins. Which brings us to the first breaking point. Then came the moment when pressure turned into crisis. A wave of strikes hit, not symbolic, not scattered, but coordinated. Dnipropetrovsk, Zaporizhia, key nodes of daily life. In a matter of hours, more than 1 million people lost access to heat and water. Hospitals moved to backup systems. Critical facilities rationed power. Officials urged citizens to reduce electricity use, not as a precaution, but as necessity. This was the first clear signal that recovery could no longer keep pace with attack. Ukraine's largest private energy provider described life inside the grid as permanent crisis mode. There was no pause. no window to rebuild fully. Strikes arrived faster than repairs. The message was unmistakable. This was not about military advantage on the front line. It was about testing the rear, the home, the hospital, the patience of ordinary people. Zelensky said there was no military sense in these attacks. And he was right. But there was strategic sense. If this analysis helps you see the war more clearly, stay with me. Because moments like this define the trajectory of conflicts. And beneath this crisis lies a deeper mechanism, one that explains why energy has become the central battlefield. What we are witnessing is not chaos. It is a system at work. Modern states run on energy, not ideology, not speeches. Energy, electricity links everything. Hospitals, water pumps, communications, industry. When you disrupt the grid, you don't need to defeat an army. You slow an entire society. This is the hidden mechanism of this war. Energy infrastructure is fragile by design. It is spread out, interconnected, built for efficiency, not constant attack. Defending every substation is impossible. Repairing them takes time, and time is the one thing repeated strikes remove. Russia understands this. By hitting energy systems in waves, it creates a permanent lag. Repairs begin, then another strike lands. Progress resets. This is how pressure compounds. Not through collapse, through fatigue. Zelensky called these attacks mockery because they target civilians indirectly without engaging them directly. No battlefield victory, just suffering layered onto cold. The goal is not blackout forever. The goal is uncertainty. Will the heat stay on tonight? Will the water run tomorrow? That question, repeated day after day, erodes resilience. And when resilience weakens, politics begins to shift, which is exactly why the next phase of this crisis became even more dangerous. Then the pressure escalated again, not with a single dramatic strike, but with repetition, wave after wave, drones, cruise missiles, ballistic missiles. Ukraine's energy operators began to fall behind the tempo of attack. Repairs were made, then undone, again and again. This was the second crisis. More subtle, more dangerous, because this time the problem was not damage, it was time. The chief executive of Ukraine's largest private energy provider said something revealing. The strikes were so frequent that there was no time to recover. Not enough hours, not enough calm. That is how modern systems fail. Not suddenly, but gradually. As winter deepened, every repair became a race against frost, against snow, against the next incoming wave. Zelensky warned of a new massive strike timed to harsh weather. This was no longer just military forecasting. It was climate strategy. Cold amplifies fear. Darkness amplifies doubt. At this stage, the war is no longer measured only in kilometers gained or lost. It is measured in stress, in delays, in how long a society can function under constant interruption. And this pressure does not remain abstract for long. Eventually, it reaches people's homes. And this is where the war becomes personal. Because when the grid fails, you feel it. You wake up in the cold, you check the tap, nothing. You worry about your parents, about your children, about hospitals that cannot afford mistakes. You are told to limit electricity use, not because you want to, but because the system is stretched thin. This is not fear created by explosions. It is fear created by waiting. Waiting for heat to return, waiting for water pressure, waiting to see if tonight will be darker than yesterday. Zelensky urged Ukrainians to remain resilient, not as a slogan, but as survival advice, because this strategy is designed to make you tired, to make endurance feel pointless, to turn daily life into a calculation of risk. And this is where support matters most. Air defenses are not abstract military tools. They protect heaters, hospitals, homes. If you want to understand what resilience really looks like in modern war, stay with me. Share this story, because behind every statistic is a family making it through another cold night. And what happens to those families does not stay contained within Ukraine. It spills outward. What happens inside Ukraine does not stay inside Ukraine. Energy warfare travels. When a modern state is pushed into constant crisis mode, its effects ripple outward. Markets react. Supply chains tighten. Diplomacy hardens. Ukraine's struggle to keep the lights on has become a geopolitical signal. It tells allies how urgent support really is. And it tells adversaries how far pressure can go without crossing red lines. This is why Zelensky's diplomatic push matters. He met European allies. He met US peace envoys, because resilience at home depends on decisions made abroad. The UK and France spoke openly about deploying troops if a peace deal is reached. Russia responded immediately, warning that foreign forces would become legitimate targets. This is escalation without movement, threats without resolution. At the same time, Ukraine heard something unsettling. Support, yes, but no ironclad guarantees against future aggression. That uncertainty is part of the pressure. Meanwhile, negotiations entered what Zelensky called a new stage. Talks about peace, talks about territory, talks about what Ukraine must give up to make the war stop. Energy attacks sharpen these talks. Cold changes calculations. Darkness accelerates fatigue. This is how infrastructure warfare reshapes diplomacy itself. And it leaves only one question unanswered. Where does this lead? When you look ahead, three paths begin to emerge. The first is cautious optimism. Energy systems hold, barely. Western air defenses continue. Pressure remains, but resilience outlasts exhaustion. Negotiations move slowly, deliberately toward a settlement. Not perfect, but stable enough to stop the bleeding. The second path is murkier. The war drags on. Strikes continue in cycles. Repairs keep pace, but only just. Life becomes functional, not normal. Diplomacy stretches time without resolving fundamentals. No collapse, no peace, only prolonged strain. And then there is the third path, the most dangerous one. Energy attacks intensify. Winter does its work. Fatigue accumulates faster than support. Political pressure grows inside Ukraine and among its allies. Negotiations harden around territorial concessions. Ukraine has so far refused, not because the battlefield demands it, but because society is tired. This is the uncomfortable truth of modern conflict. Outcomes are no longer decided only by armies. They are decided by systems. And by how long those systems can endure deliberate disruption. Zelensky believes the war could end in the first half of 2026. That belief rests on one fragile assumption: that resilience lasts longer than pressure. Whether that assumption holds will determine not just Ukraine's future, but how wars are fought in the decades to come. And that brings us to the final insight. What this war has revealed is something far larger than Ukraine. It has exposed a new reality. In the 21st century, wars are no longer won only by taking land. They are won by breaking systems, by turning electricity into leverage, winter into pressure, daily life into a battlefield. Russia is betting on fatigue, not surrender. Fatigue. Ukraine is betting on resilience, not victory parades. Resilience. And the world is watching which force lasts longer. Because if a modern society can be bent by darkness and cold, then no country is truly insulated. Not by borders, not by treaties, not by distance. This is why this story matters beyond headlines, beyond Ukraine. Beyond this war, it is a test of whether open societies can endure sustained pressure without losing their core. If you want to understand where global conflict is heading, remember this moment. Remember the million people without heat, not as victims, but as a signal. Stay with me. share this analysis, because the next chapter of global power will not be written only on battlefields. It will be written in the dark,